Alright everyone, the nation of Israel has once again decided to ignore ISIS, which you would think would be a more pressing issue, in order to attack some militias that are friendly to Bashar al-Assad. Apparently what happened is some artillery was being fired by a pro-Assad militia in Syria, and 3 shells apparently landed on the Israeli side of the border in an area that's not really inhabited. The Israelis responded with airstrikes on Assad's forces. Now, a few weeks ago, I believe it was, the Israelis conducted some airstrikes, and actually some surface-to-air missiles were fired by Assad's forces. It's not exactly two friendly countries, so to speak. And Syria reported that one Israeli aircraft had been destroyed. The Israelis said, no, that's nonsense. They said one of the missiles had strayed into Israeli airspace and been fired on by sort of the Iron Dome system there and brought down. It's a tale of two countries that don't get along, but can I just submit something here that might make sense for the Israelis? If you think, as most Westerners do, that ISIS is probably a bigger threat than Assad, because Assad's capabilities are severely degraded and mostly regional. Like ISIS, they operate in Libya, they operate in Afghanistan, they operate in Syria and in Iraq. They operate to some degree in Europe, probably the United States too. They've got a worldwide reach. Syria doesn't really have that. You might think that the Iran-backed sort of rebel groups like Hezbollah have a significant, at least regional capability. But Syria, do Assad's forces, they can't even control their own country. I would think you'd be more concerned with beating on ISIS, and this would be a great opportunity. If Netanyahu really wants peace, as he constantly talks about wanting, we want liberty and we want peace, leave us a fucking alone, you know, we just want our homeland. If that's really where Netanyahu is coming from, don't you think he'd want to ingratiate himself to his northern neighbor, elbow Assad, and say, yeah, you know, if the past is the past, we got bigger fucking fish to fry, why don't we help you destroy ISIS? I think it'd be a possibility for them to secure that border, maybe even negotiate over Golan and so forth, and get that off of their back. Like, they already did this with Egypt. The Egyptians primarily leave the Israelis alone. They're predominantly peaceful with the Jordanians. They're peaceful with the Lebanese government, maybe not Hezbollah. But this would be a chance for lasting peace within their region, other than the Palestine issue, which would probably partially diffuse if they weren't constantly perturbing Assad. And yet I see no action by Israel towards the Syrian people to try to actually get a lasting peace. And the onus is kind of on them. They're still occupying Golan. Back in 2006, I think it was, they struck, if I remember correctly, a Syrian nuclear reactor, which was apparently peaceful and apparently couldn't have been used for weapons research. It was for generating energy. They decided to send in the stealth bomber, so to speak, and destroy that. I would think that this would be an opportunity to look at a largely crippled Assad who doesn't even control his own nation and say, would you like some help? Because we're tired of all this fucking fighting. Let's have some peace for a change. Just go beat on ISIS together. It'd be funny. It would be as big a sort of brotherhood as like the U.S. We have these pipe dreams. I can't be the only one who has wet dreams about the United States teaming up with Russia to go beat on our enemies. I can't be the only person who believes that that would be a good thing for the world. I can't be the only one who thinks that the two main world militaries joining together for the purposes of wiping ISIS off the fucking face of the earth would be legendary. I mean, everyone would have a boner watching live streams of that. Likewise, if Israel and Syria were to team up for such a thing, it would create a very strong brotherhood between these two groups of people. Yeah, Assad's an Alawite. So fucking what? It's a case of the Israelis are largely partnered with the Saudis. Saudi Arabia has a lot of oil. They send their pipelines through Jordan and Israel into the Mediterranean. They pipe the oil through there. The Israelis get money for it. That's ultimately what it's about. It's about money. This isn't even about religious ideology. It has nothing to do with Judaism and Islam as religions. It has to do with money flowing from Saudi Arabia like water. Now, the Western world can get its oil from fucking Venezuela. It can get it from all sorts of... We can get it domestically now. What are these nations going to do when that oil revenue dries up? As it increasingly is and is going to continue to do so. China's not buying as much oil anymore. They're putting solar panels up wherever they can. They're also buying a lot of coal. They're buying U.S. coal now. They're not even getting it from North Korea. They'd rather get tankers of coal from the United States than get it from the Hermit Kingdom. The world is changing. My advice to the Israelis and the Syrians and everyone else in that region is get with the times or you're going to be left behind the times. There's going to be some big problems for that region. Ultimately, it's a little bit of the Sunni versus Shia, and it's a little bit of the corporate thing. A little bit of the oil sales, oil pipelines. People noticed this when the Iraq War happened. Oh, this pipeline was going to go up. Saddam stood in its way, and so then we invaded magically within months. Yeah, I wonder if that was coincidental. Likewise, do you think it's coincidental when Netanyahu takes the opportunity to bomb Assad's forces rather than bombing the more obvious party that he should be presumably concerned about, which is ISIS? A lot of people call ISIS the Israeli intelligence service or something along those lines. I don't think they directly fund them, but it doesn't seem they're all that worried about ISIS. It's like the Saudi Arabians. They draw their tanks and artillery and shit up on their northern border, right? They say, oh, we're worried about ISIS. ISIS starts taking stuff in Iraq and Syria. The Saudis act freaked out. ISIS never attacks them. It hasn't even once to this day. Meanwhile, the main Saudi force goes down to Yemen to kick some ass. The Yemenis, the Houthi rebels, they cross the Saudi border and start burning villages to the ground. The Saudi Arabian military, I don't know, they've got a modern military. They've got a fairly large military. They can't even deal with some Houthi rebels. I'm rather concerned that we may have chosen the wrong ally within the region when I see the ineptitude with which the Saudi government truly operates. Meanwhile, Israel is too busy fucking around with Assad because of stray artillery that wouldn't even be a fucking problem if they would try to extend an olive branch to the Syrians and say, yeah, well, ISIS is a bigger concern. Let's, at least temporarily, let's kind of be friendly. We can negotiate later, but we're worried about this. I don't see them doing that. It makes me slightly suspicious of Netanyahu's motives within the region. Let's just say that. So, yeah. Once again, airstrikes by Israel upon pro-Assad forces. Not the Syrian military itself, but militias that are friendly towards Assad. They're opposing the FSA and ISIS. They're pro-government militias. Decides to strike them because a few artillery shells land on the Israeli side of the border. It's like the utmost paranoia. It doesn't even injure anybody. Like, did these just land on a bleak country hillside? Not even covered in grass. It's just a rocky outcropping, gets hit with artillery. Oh no, we've got to go bomb the Syrian militia because they're starting a war. They're not going to start a war with Israel. They're not crazy. You've got nuclear weapons. The Syrians don't. ISIS is more likely to deploy a dirty bomb than the Syrians will ever be. So I'm not sure what Israel exactly is quite concerned about. That's about all. Peace out.